First, we'll understand what CSS is, and then we'll understand a very important topic known as the box model. After that, we'll find out how we can use CSS, how we can attach CSS in an HTML file. So there are 3 different ways for that. We'll find out which to use and when. Okay. The next we will understand CSS selectors, CSS properties, and different types of CSS units. So these units are mainly for height and width of elements. And then at the end, we'll understand how to create layouts, and we will learn that while working on our portfolio itself. Okay, so CSS is, it's not very simple. It's a vast topic, and there are a lot of things that you can know, you can remember, you can understand. So it's very important to understand how things work CSS wise. So only then you'll be able to truly master CSS. And there's only so much I can cover in this session to introduce all of you to CSS. But don't let this demotivate you. It's think about it as a challenge, but the reward, it's invaluable because not a lot of developers, they properly understand CSS. CSS skills are very valuable. So after the session ends, there's quite a few things you can do on your own time to learn more about CSS. So just keep learning and exploring. That's how you'll grow as a developer. Okay, so what is CSS? It stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So there is meaning to the first word and then the next couple of words. So style sheet, it's just a sheet containing HTML elements, and cascading, we'll get to that later. So CSS is not a programming language. It's not a markup language. It's a styling language for the web, and describes how the elements will be rendered on the screen or on a print media. So when you click Control P on a web page, you get the print preview, right? So we can also describe how the element should be styled on that particular print media. And yeah, it's basically the presentational and aesthetic component of a web page. So what does CSS look like? This is the basic syntax of a CSS rule set. So when you come across something that looks like this in a CSS file, it's known as a rule set. So this right here, you see it's a selector. So we know that there is a tag. So we use the tag's name P followed by a couple of curly braces. And in the middle of that, we will put something known as a declaration. So here we declare a rule that should apply to the P selector, that is the paragraph elements throughout the HTML document. And what the rule is the color should be red. So this part is known as the property, as the value. It should be separated by a colon and it ends with a semicolon. Okay, so that's pretty clear. So what are selectors? Selectors are used to find or select HTML elements in the DOM. So, you want to style a particular element, for example, an image element, you want to give it a height or a width, then you will use the img tag, image tag, and specify the rules inside its rule set, and that will apply to all the images that are present on that particular web page. Okay, so right here we have a lots of different kinds of selectors. The first one is just the basic selector that we saw in the previous slide. The second one is a group selector. That means, so here we have different tag names separated by commas. So you have tag and then h1 followed by h2 separated by commas. So let's go back a slide. So instead of p here, we'll have p comma h1 comma h2 and then followed by this rule set. So that means this particular rule set will be applied to all the three tags. So all the h1 and h2 elements will also be read in along with the paragraph elements. Okay, the next one here is pretty important. So you might remember from the previous sessions that we put something like this hashtag about in href of a link in the navigation bar. So we had the link to the about section of our page, right? So in there in the href we put hashtag about. So what this hashtag about means is so it stands for the ID selector. So anything on the page that has an ID, you can select it using hashtag and followed by the ID. So for our about section, we had the ID about, and hence we use hashtag about. Okay, the next one is a class selector. So in order to style different elements using a particular rule, for example, I want okay, it's a weird rule. I want the elements to have a height of 10 pixels, let's say. Like nobody will ever do that, but let's say we want that. So what we will do is we will write out this selector followed by the curly brace, not this one, the class name we will give. For example, we give it a class name fixed height. So it will be dot fixed height followed by the rule set in having height 10 pixels. So here, this would have been a better example. So dot button is a class that applies to all the buttons on the web page. So, we will have the same style for each of the buttons. And we have classes so that we don't have to repeat the same CSS code over and over again throughout the document. You will understand once we get to it. And these are some combinations. So this is the tag name followed by the class. So it will only target those elements which are anchor tags and have class names dn. Similarly, this one. So these are okay. I'll just explain it, afterwards while we code, so it will be more clear. And the last one is the star selector. So it will select all the elements. Okay. So how to include CSS in a web page? Let's try and understand that. Okay, so you can open your code sandbox. Okay, I'm just going to give you guys a minute for that. Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. So I'm sending a link to my code sandbox in case anybody wants to start from where we left earlier. Previous workshop, just open the link I sent you and fork it from right here. So it will create a copy for your own account and then you can work in there. Okay, so just open this 404.html. So that page is the 404 page. So you guys might have seen that whenever something goes wrong, or maybe something you're looking for on the web is not found, then the browser will show you a 404 errors. So we have a 404 page in our design as well. We haven't yet done it, but we will do it. Okay, so just create the HTML boilerplate this way. Click the the bang and tab. Okay, so let's give it the title, not found Bert Simpson. All right. So we were talking about how we can include the CSS in our files. So there are three different ways. The first way is to use inline CSS. The second one is external CSS. The third one is the style tag. So I'll explain each one of them. Just a second. Let's create a couple elements. Okay, I'll just go to the index page and copy this image. Okay, we'll remove it later. It's just for us to work on for now. Okay, so let's give h1 not found. The resource you were looking for is not available or has been removed. Okay, so that sounds like most of the websites. I think we should first to the page itself, and only then we can see. All right, and instead of the purple sprinkles, we want the person here, so it's more clear. Okay, let's say I want to give some styling to the h1 element. So what I'll do is, so first we are discussing the inline CSS styling. So give this attribute to your element, the style attribute, and in there we can define many declarations as we want. So in case you forgot what a declaration is, let's say color followed by a colon followed by so this has we've used this throughout, so I'm going to use it once again. So we have the color Rebecca purple. As soon as you save it, you're going to see you have this h1 tag in purple now. Let's give it another rule. Okay, declaration. Let's say font family. So font family. This is a declaration. This is a property that you use to for the element to have a particular font. For example, so in our browser, by default, the font will be, this serif font, and doesn't look very pretty right now. So let's say I want. Okay, so if you type this, it probably won't work in your browser because this is a font on my system. So a better example here would be sans serif. Okay. Okay, so these are the fonts. They are browser default, but they look better. So I'm going to give this h1 a font family of sans serif. Okay. So what you call an inline style. So if you want to give yet another rule for the styling of this element, you can go ahead and just type it out here. So let's say I want to increase the font size. So there is another rule called font size, and I'll give it, let's say, 50 pixels. So this here is a unit of height or width, basically length. So this is a on the browser. So this is 50 pixels. Let's make it 150 and have a look. Okay. Big, not going to use it. Okay, so that's how inline styles work. Now we also want to style this one, right? So what we are going to do is yet another attribute, style tag. Sorry, the style attribute, and let's give it the font family, sans serif, so it looks better than what we have right now. And I feel that it's too small right now. So I'm just going to, okay, so let me just remove this because the H1 tag by default is pretty big. Don't need a 50 pixel font size. Let's, okay. So here's something. By default, in your browser, if the zoom level is 100%, this size is 16 pixels. So, okay, just a second. So let's see if I'm correct. So if I make it 16 pixels, it's not gonna change. It will still look the same. Okay, now we want to make it bigger. So let's say 24 pixels, and yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Let's go to the image now. Okay, so initially we use this attribute called height on image and gave it a 250, right? So we were able to do that because the image tag, it supports the height attribute. It also supports the width attribute. So if you only give the image tag the height attribute, so what it will do is the browser will render this image with this particular height and to preserve the aspect ratio. So what the aspect ratio is, the ratio of the height and the width of a particular image. So if it aspect ratio, it will adjust the width according to the height. So let's say if we give a height by ourselves, sorry, width by ourselves, 250 pixels, then the browser will render it as a proper square because we have 250 pixels for both dimensions. But you can see that this image now looks distorted. So let's move this one and both looking good again. So if you try this height tag on, height attribute on paragraph, it won't work. Let's say 10 pixels. It's not gonna work because only the image tag supports the height and width attribute. So there are a couple more tags that support these attributes, but let's not get into it. Not needed right now. Okay, so instead of using this attribute, we will again use style and give it a height of 50 pixels. Okay, 50 is too small, 250. There it is, still looks the same, but it's a good, there are many reasons that why you should style your images with CSS itself. So this is inline styling. Now you can see that in H1 tag and the paragraph tag, we have the same rule, font family sans serif. So let's say we have a lot of paragraphs on a page. Let's say you have a blog, and there will be a lot of paragraphs, a lot of headings, subheadings, and you want all of them to have the same font family, sans serif. Then it's very it's very repetitive and redundant to have this rule set on each of the element. So what we would do is, let's explore the second way to uh, attach CSS. So there's a style tag. So the style tag can contain the CSS for this particular web page. Okay, so we will write the first CSS rule set. Okay, so we can see that we want to give a lot of elements the same rule set. So for that, what we can use is a class. So how we can write out a class rule set is we start with a full stop or a period, and it will be followed by the class name. Let's say font sans. So this is just a class name. It's not something predefined in the browser. It's something you are naming. You can, name it anything. Let's say, anything for that matter. But it's recommended that you use sensible names, that have some relation to the rules inside of it. Okay, so font sans, it basically means the font family will be sans serif. Okay. So let's remove this from here and this from here. Okay. So how we can apply these classes to the elements is we'll use the class attribute and just give it the class name font sans. So this is the class for h1 and we have the same class for paragraph tag. And right there. So you can see we have removed the inline style declarations, yet we get the styling because of this rule set right here. So this is what you call the style tag CSS. Okay. Um, okay, nothing else in this. So you can see that this way we were able to reuse the same of CSS throughout the web page. Now imagine you have a big website. It has a lot of pages, right? So, you can think about this. You will have the same code repeated across multiple files. So in case in future there is a design decision and the fonts, you change it to something else. Let's say Calibri. I don't exactly remember the name if it's Calibri. Yeah, it is. So then you will have to go to those pages and change it to Calibri. So not a very good idea again. So another way to attach CSS is using external style sheets. So for that, we use a link tag and it has a couple of attributes. First attribute is rel, which stands for relation. So it's basically what is the relation of this link for this particular web page. So that's a style sheet or style. Let's okay, it is style sheet. Okay. And then we specify the URL of this particular style sheet. So let's look in our project folder. Okay, so we don't have any files, any CSS files here. So let's create one. Okay, not there. Okay, here. Styles.css. Okay, so this is the first CSS file that we are creating in this workshop, and let's attach it. So we will use the same notation as we did in the source tag, source attribute for the image tag. So root followed by styles.css, and that's it. So that's how you attach the external style sheet. Okay, let's open it. And first, let's remove from here. Okay. Save it. So you can see the styles I want. Now let's put the styles in this file. And as soon as we save it, we can see that the styles are back here. So that's how you attach styles in an external style sheet. Okay. So earlier, excuse me, earlier I talked word in the CSS, the cascading, right? So what it means is we write the same class name here, and let me give it a font family of Open Sans. So whenever you have a font that has a name having more than one word, so just put them in quotes. Okay, seems like Open Sans is in there, so I'll just use this one. Okay, so this is the enter font. It's on my computer. I'm not sure if it's there on your computer. So let me comment this out. So this is how a CSS comment looks like. It starts with a slash followed by a star, and ends with a star and a slash. Okay, so if okay, it's not very visible. Let me use some other font. It's a little more clear. Okay, so you can see that this is the Poppins font right here. So what's happening is we have first declared that it should be sans serif, the default sans serif in the browser, and then on line 6 we have declared that it should be the Poppins font. This is what cascading means. If the browser comes across a rule for the same selector lower in the style sheet, or so even inside the style tag, if it comes across a rule for the same selector lower in the file, what it will do is it will give a higher priority to this declaration and not this. So this is the style that will be applied to that. So that's what cascading means. Okay, so that is cascading style sheets. Let's remove this Poppins and just have sans serif. Okay. So yeah, that's how we can include CSS in a web page. So the box model. Okay, so in CSS, this is a very important concept. So what is the box model? So it's basically a box that wraps each element. So each element on a web page is actually a box. So let's have a look at this. So let's imagine a div, and its width is 300, and let's say even its height is 300. So that's why we have a square right here. So maybe it contains some text. So that's the content, and it lies inside this. Oh, oops. Just inside this content box you can see right here. Okay, and then we have the padding. So you can see we've given a 50 pixel padding. So on each side of this content box, on the left one, right, up and down, we will have 50 pixels of padding. And after that, we have something called the border. So each element can have a border. It's not compulsory. You can declare it in the rule set. So it is followed by the border, and at the end it has margin. So margins are always transparent. You can't give a color to margins, and that's exactly what it sounds like, a margin. So it will separate this particular element from another element on the web page, using a predefined value. So we have 20 pixels here. So there will be a minimum of 20 pixels of margin between this this div, any other element present on the web page. So any element won't be less than 20 pixels closer to this content box. I'm sorry, this whole box, not just the content box. I meant the whole box. Okay. So the width of this div, it will be this content width plus the padding plus the border and the margin. So you just don't add it, at the single values. You need to add it twice because we have the padding on the left as well as the right. So that's how we will get the width. So margin twice the margin, twice the border, twice the padding, and the content width. And the sum will be the width of the whole element. Okay, so that's the box model. And as you saw, that we have the width. So it's a length, right? We need units for that. So we come to CSS units. We have 1 pixel, the pixel that's rendered on our screen. Then we have percentage. So percentage is relative to the parent container. And then we have rem, m. M is basically height of the letter M. And rem, not necessary to understand how it works right now. Just remember it's relative am. So it's basically height of the letter M, but it takes into consideration the size in the parent container. If you don't understand that, it's okay, not necessary. And then we have a unit called VW. So that stands for viewport width. So the screen of the browser window where the content is being rendered, that's the viewport width. And then we have the viewport height, and that's the height of the window on which the content is being rendered. And these are units that are not very used, so they are hardly used. I've never used them personally. So these are centimeter, millimeter, and inch. Yeah, but don't use them, you won't find them required. Okay, so let's get to coding now. And yes, there are chances that you won't understand everything I do, so we will take breaks in between to understand if that you guys can ask if you didn't understand anything. Okay, let's get back to index.html. Let's open the index file. Okay, so this is where we are right now. So I request everybody to open the index files so that we can work on the landing page now. Okay, so what we are going to do here is use an external style sheet. Remove this fonts. Okay, we can keep it. Might be useful. Okay, so I think we are going to want all these texts in sans serif. So what we can do here is, so you can see that everything that's being displayed here is inside the body tag. So you can type the tag name of body and the curly braces, just type in font family. We don't need this right now. And if we save it, yeah, it didn't work. And that is because we haven't yet attached the style sheet. So let's link the style sheet. Okay, and root styles.css. Perfect. Once I save it, everything will be sans serif. So yes, it is. All right. Okay, let me just show you the designs and you guys will understand how we are moving forward with this. Okay, so we are going to create the layout here. Okay, so we have a series of that are in a row, one after another, with some spacing in the middle. And then we have this header. Okay, so let's first focus on the nav bar. Where is, okay, it's right here. I'm just going to put this in the style sheet because it's present on all the pages. So that's the smart thing to do so that we don't have to repeat it everywhere. Okay. So we have this one navigation bar here, but there is a chance that there might be two navigation bars, and you just want to style one of them. So it is generally a good practice to give class names and not directly use the element tags to give styles. So I'm just going to give it the class name of navigation. Okay. Okay, before we get to this, I think there is something else we need to understand. Okay, I'm really sorry about this. We just need to look at it. You don't have to do it on your own computer. I'm just showing it to you so that you guys can understand the box model better. Okay, let's say we have some text lorem here. Okay, cool. So this is the div. Open it in another tab. Okay, so that's the div. And let's just say box. That will work. And I'm just going to use the style tag for now. Okay, so let's give it a margin of 50 pixels visible. I'm going to give it a padding of 20 pixels. I'm going to give it a border width. So a border contains a lot of properties. It has a width, it has a style. So the border might be solid, it might be dotted, it might be the wavy one. So the multiple rules that can define the border. So first we have border width. So let's say we want the border to be 5 wide. Then we have the border color. Let's say I want the border to be okay, so we have used red a lot. Okay, I'm out of colors. Okay, okay, this one's good. Border color, and then okay, have a look at this first. Okay, so you guys might see that the text somehow, it's leaving some space here now. So to get a better idea what's happening here, let's give it a background color. So this property right here, it defines the background color of the whole element. So if I give the color, let's say, okay, doesn't look good. Yeah, still not a lot. Might not be able to. Let's just give it the red color. Might not look good, but works for now. Okay, so you can see that this is the div that we define right here. And this right here is the margin. So this is 50 pixels. This is 50 pixels. And below this, there won't be anything for 50 pixels. This must also be 50 pixels. So let's understand it better right here. Okay, so I'm going to toggle the dev tools and let's look at this. So in the elements tab, you can see all the CSS related stuff. So styles we have right here. So click this icon and select this div that we defined. Okay, so let me just make it bigger so that everyone can see it. Okay, so that's the div class of box. And you can see right here that we have a declaration for the box class. It has all the rule set we defined. So if you hover over anyone, you might be able to see it. Okay, so 50 pixels of margin. So you can see it's highlighted right here. So that's the 50 pixels of margin. And then border, there is no border. Okay, why is that? Okay, let's say. Okay, right. So what happened here? Okay, let me just remove this. Wait, let's go back. Let's give this border a style. So as I talked earlier, that it needs to have a style. Okay. So now you can see that there is a border of 5 pixels on each. and then we have the padding. So the background color, it will start rendering as soon as the border ends. So it will be on the padding as well as the content. So that's why we have this 20 pixels of red stuff around the text. So that's the padding, and this is the content itself. So this is the representation of the element as the box model. So this will help you sometimes to understand what's going on or what's going wrong. Okay, so let's say you want to experiment different widths. So what if I make it 40? And so if you want to increase or decrease this, you can use your arrow keys. So normally it will only decrease by a single unit, but if you press shift and the arrow keys, it will decrease or increase with the difference of 10 units. So if I have 20 pixels of margin, this will be it. I think, okay, I need some more. I'll have 50 pixels. Likewise, I can increase or decrease the padding. Okay, so you can play around with these values right here before, so just so that you can make sure, okay, this is what I want. And then you can use those value and paste it in the style sheet. Okay, but they won't. So if you edit them here, they won't change the actual code. So you will have to replace the code in your code sandbox or your own file. Okay, so because, well, if you reload, they'll go away. Okay, so that's CSS box model visualized for all of you. Okay, let's go back to the home page. I really want to create the layout now so that it looks pretty. Okay, so we defined the navigation class here. Let's go ahead. Okay, so if we have a class, it should start with the period. Okay, so each element, it has a display property. So, okay, so, well, this isn't very clear. Just describes how the element should be displayed. If it should span through the entire width of the viewport, or should it just be as wide as the content it has. Let me just show it to you. So right now, by default, the div has a display of block. So when I said that the the element spans across the width of the window, that is the block display. And instead, if I have, let's say, inline, that means that it will only take as much space as the content needs. So let me just show it to you. So right now you can see that each of these links, they are on separate lines. So that is because they are occupying all the width, the whole width. So if you hover over these elements, you can see that the list is, the full width, and the elements are also full width. So that's what's happening. They have the display of a block. So that isn't entirely true in this the list, but it will be the case, for example, for the paragraph. So you can see right here that it has a display of block, and even the h1 tag. All right, so the list element, they have a display of list item. Don't need to worry about lists and their styling a lot, because what we usually do is we just strip off the browser styles from the list, because it's not very okay. So there isn't anything that I want to do in the navigation right now. Let's just try and get these three in a single line. Okay, so the selector that we are going to use for this is, well, let's give it a class name. Navigation followed by 2 hyphens, and link. That sounds like it. So it makes sense, right? So this is a navigation. That's why I give it a class of navigation double hyphen link. So there is a reason I'm using double hyphen and not just a single hyphen. I'm trying to follow a notation called the BEM notation. I don't think that it's necessary, but that's just what I follow. So you don't have to understand it right now. Just try and use double hyphens. Okay. So navigation link. Okay, these three links have navigation links. So wait. Okay, good. Dot navigation link. Let's give it a display of inline. Okay, so nothing's going to change, and that is because we are trying to change this style of the anchor element, whereas we actually want to change the style of the list element, because that's causing the element to span across the width. So instead of this, we will okay. And okay, so what I did here is I'm just making it quicker. You can select all these together. So let's first select just one. What you can do is press Alt and then select the rest. And then you can cut them with Control X and then paste them with Control V. Just something that comes very handy when there is a lot of copy pasting. Okay. So that's navigation link. And now you guys are able to see that these elements, they are only occupying the space that the content inside them requires. So this is the link, and inside we have the about link, and it only requires this space. So that much space is occupied. And similarly for the rest of the links. So I hope that makes it clear. That's the inline display. And by default, almost all of the tags have block display, like majority of them, not all of them. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Okay. So now we have these three in a single line. So that's a little bit closer to our design. And then we have, so something similar right here. We want it in the same line, right? So copy it with Control C. Just going to paste it right here. And there we go. So we have the links with, in a single row. So you can see that these links, they have very terrible styles. So by default, they are blue, and if you click them, they become purple, and then they have underlines. They look terrible. So let's remove all of them. So the first thing will be the color. In our image, we can see that the links are kind of gray. Okay, so let's give it a gray color. And we want to remove the underline, right? So you use this rule set, text decoration. So that's how you can specify what kind of underline the text you want the text to have. So we want none. So we'll just have none. And well, doesn't seem like it worked. Let's see. Text decoration color. Well, okay. Let's see why it did not work. We have now right. So another very good example of what's going wrong here. This is happening. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to remove underlines from anchor tags. The anchor tags have underlines by default and not the list elements. So now we need to target the anchor tags inside the elements having this class. So what we can do is we can use an operator. So navigation link and then greater than operator a tag. So what's happening here is we are telling the browser that there are elements having this class, and then they have an immediate child, not a grandchild or a grandchild, an immediate child with this tag name, the anchor tag. And for that we want no text decoration. So we will just have text decoration none here and gray. So now hopefully it should work. All right, so yeah, it is working. Now we need to space this out. So what we should do is give it some padding. What do you guys think? I think padding should do because we want equal amount of space on both the sides of each of these links, right? So that's what padding will do. But it would be a good exercise to understand how margin will work. Okay, so let's give it a margin of 20 pixels. Okay, so you guys can see right here we have the margins. Okay, let me reload. Way better to look at here. Okay, so we have 20. Okay, just a sec. So we can see the box. We have links. So on each side they have 20 pixels of margin. Okay, now instead of the margin, let's try padding. Okay. Well, there isn't any difference. Right. So you guys can see that there isn't actually any difference right now if we give it a margin or a padding. But let's say we want the person to hover and then maybe it changes color when the person hovers on the element. So let's try and make that happen. Okay, so by default we have a margin of 20. Now let's give this whole link, including the list element, some background when a person hovers. So we have a neat selector for that. So what you do is you write a colon, a hover, right? So this is just to specify that these styles will only apply when the element is being hovered by the user. So this is hover, and let's say we want it. No, we want its background to turn Rebecca purple. Okay, so Rebecca purple. I'm not able to get the. Okay, so you can see we have the color code for this color. Let's click it. Okay. Okay, RGB. So this is the red part, the green part, and the blue part. Now I want the background to be not solid. Like if it's completely solid, it won't look good. So let's say I want it to have an opacity of 25%. So you can write 25%, it's fine. But I normally use this 0.25. And let's see what happens. Okay. So you can see only this much area is being highlighted as purple right now. But if I change the margin to padding, let's see what happens now. Okay, so now you can see that the padded area and the content both have a background color of the, well, Rebecca purple. So this is the difference that you'll have when you use padding or margin. Margin will be transparent, but padding will have the background color. Okay, so if you use padding, there won't actually be any space between these two elements. You can see that they start, right beside each other. So you can also give it a margin. Let's say you want a margin as well. So you can do that too. Let's say we want 10 pixel margin. Sure, you can do that too. So now you can see they don't starting point. Okay. Now, so the actual layout is, well, it's a row, right? And then there is some space here and here. But as the screen size will change, the space will also change. It should change, right? Then only it will look proper on all the screen sizes. Let's not talk about mobile right now, just different sizes of laptops or desktops. So there is a very good layout model in CSS called the flex box. So it's just short for flexible box. So we have the box model, right? And then we have the flexible box model. It's for laying out elements in one dimension. So we can see that the navigation bar is, going in a single dimension, the row, right? So we want to lay it out in a row, and hence we will use a flex box with a row. Okay. So the navigation has a class of navigation, and in there we will specify the display of flex. Write, the whole word flex box. We just write flex and look at what happens. Okay, so you can see all these elements, they are in a row now. So not only for this, you can also do that for the list items. So the list items container, let's give it a class of navigation link list. Okay, so now you might think that I used the single hyphen. So that's because links list is a single element, right? But this navigation, it's a parent element. So it kind of tells you the hierarchy. So it says that there is some navigation class, and inside of that we have a links list kind of container. So that's why we have this double hyphen. Okay. What was it? Navigation links list. Okay, so it's an unordered list, and we can give it a display of flex. And let's try and remove these rules. Not needed now. Well, so the default styling comes back. So let's just have the display of inline for now. Okay, so they don't look very good right now, but we are getting there. So another way to remove the bullet points that we were able to see here is by specifying on the list element. The list container, the unordered list itself, not the li. So for that, we will go to the navigation links list and give it a list style. Okay, so let's see what happens when we remove inline. So the navigation links list, which is this list, doesn't have bullet points. So that worked. This list, the same class as well. Okay, so that's working pretty well. Now you can see that all these elements, they are very close, like they are stuck, almost stuck with each other. But what we want is we want them to span across the width of the window. So for that, we will use another property on the flex container. So in our, let me just open it here. Okay, what happened? Okay. So this navigation bar, it's what we call a flex container, and then the children are flex items. So the flex container, we can give it a couple of properties based on which the elements rendered. So it will basically change the spacing between those elements. So let's have a look. Let's open the styles. In the links list, we have a display of flex. So that is okay. We are not concerned with that. We are concerned with the navigation. So we have a display flex. Now we will, let's see. So justify space between. Okay, just have a look at what happens. So you can see it's better here. Okay, so we have the image here, we have the list here, and another list here. So all the space in the middle, it's just some empty space. So and that is because of this rule right here, justify content space between. So what it's saying is that all the empty space, it should be distributed in between the elements. So you might be able to see that the right space and the left space both are equal. So that's how equal distribution of space is done in a flex container using justify content. And then you can use align items. So what this is going to do is, right now we can see that these are stuck at the top, and they are going till the bottom of the nav bar. But it would look better if they were just in the center, right? So let's make that happen. So we use another rule called align items, and we give it the value center. So now you can see they're on the center. So that looks very close to what we want. But we want spacing in between these, right? So what you can do is, where is the navigation links list? Right here. This one will work. I'm just trying it out. Okay, here it is. Okay. But okay, let's not get to it right now. So we will, let's give it some padding again. So the links, padding, let's say 16 pixels, and no border. I don't think we need border here, and maybe let's enough 8 pixels. So I'm going to do it in fractions of 16 or multiples of 16. Okay, so you can see that all these are spaced right properly. They have padding and they have the right margin too. Okay, so I think that doesn't look really good right now, and it would look better, it would feel better if we had rounded edges, right? So to have this, what we can do is we can specify the border. So let's specify the border. So we want a border which is transparent. So the border color, it will be transparent. We don't want anything. Then we have this property. So border radius. Let's just look at it. What happens? Okay. So now you can see that these are rounded. So that's what the border radius does. It clips off the corners. So it will give it a good rounded corner. And if you increase the radius, well, this round will be less sharper. Okay, so I think let's give it a very high border radius and let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see that it has, been converted into a, so it's completely round on all the corners. So that's what happens when you give it a very high border radius, like 1,000 pixels. Okay, and I'm going to edit the padding a bit. So using this rule, we have the same padding on each sides. But what if I want to give different padding? Maybe on top and bottom, I want to have 16, and on right and left, I just want, let's say 24. So what we can do for that is we can specify padding top, padding bottom, padding right, and left. So we can manipulate each of these values individually. Okay, so now you can see that there is more padding on the sides compared to the center. I mean, the vertical padding. Okay. I don't really like the gray color here. I'm gonna just make it, sorry, black. All right, and I'm going to make this color a bit brighter. It looks very dull. So yes, you can drag this around and it will give you a color that you like. So let's see if this is a better color. Yeah, this looks better. The previous one was quite dull. Okay. So sometimes, like in this case, you can see that this isn't centered. And even this Twitter icon isn't centered. So in CSS, people make a really big fuss about centering elements, centering items, and it is, well, for those who don't understand CSS, it is quite difficult. But there's a neat trick that we can use, which will center the element instantly. But I'm not going to cover that right now. For finding that out, you'll have to catch me in the next session. And I promise it's just 3 lines. And in 3 lines, you'll be able to center anything you want. Okay. So I promised earlier that we will style the whole, all of this. But I think understanding the basics of CSS is very important, because if I didn't take you all through all of this, the box model, the syntax of CSS, the classes, well, you wouldn't be able to understand anything else. So I guess in the next session, we will complete all of the styling on the landing page, as well as the contact page, hopefully. Okay, so that's it. I hope you understood the CSS well, and if there are any questions, shoot. Anything. I know there has to be questions. So everyone understood classes and selectors. Okay, are you guys there? No one, nobody has questions. Okay. Okay, maybe this might help. If you guys don't have any questions, you can leave. And if at all, if you're going through something and you don't understand anything, you can text me or any of the mentors. That is the development mentors. Okay, thank you everyone.